Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube. All on our Patreon. The twin suns of Lothal hung low on the horizon, bleeding amber and crimson across the wilderness. Luke Skywalker stood before the ancient Jedi Temple, his black robes rippling in the evening wind that swept across the barren landscape. 5 years had passed since Endor, 5 years since he'd held his father's broken body and watched the man who was once Darth Vader slip into the Force with a final rattling breath. The temple ruins rose before him like skeletal fingers clawing at the sky, weathered stone pillars arranged in a perfect circle, half buried by time in the endless Lothal dust. This place was old, older than the Empire, older than the Republic, older perhaps than the Jedi Order itself. Luke closed his eyes and reached out through the Force. He felt the Lothwolves first, massive predators circling at the periphery of his awareness, their presence ancient and watchful. They didn't approach, didn't threaten. They simply observed, as if they'd been expecting him. "I came seeking answers," Luke said aloud, his voice swallowed by the vast emptiness. "I have students now, Force sensitives I've gathered from across the galaxy, but I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to train them, how to rebuild what was destroyed." The wind answered with silence. Luke opened his eyes and moved forward. The Lothwolves parted, creating a path. Their eyes, too intelligent, too knowing, tracked his every step. As he reached the outermost pillar, the ground beneath his feet began to tremble. Not an earthquake, something else, something responding to his presence. The stone pillars hummed with energy. Dust cascaded from their surfaces as they shifted, grinding against mechanisms that had lain dormant for millennia. The earth split between them with a sound like tearing fabric, revealing a descending staircase carved from the living rock. Luke ignited his lightsaber, green blade casting sharp shadows, and descended into darkness. The stairs spiraled downward for what felt like hours, though time seemed to lose meaning in this place. The air grew thick with the Force, pressing against his skin like water. Every breath tasted of ozone and something else. Something timeless and vast. Finally, the stairs opened into a circular chamber. Luke's breath caught. The room was massive, easily 50 meters across, but it was the mural that commanded every fragment of his attention, a stone carving that covered the entire far wall, reaching from floor to ceiling. 3 figures dominated the ancient artwork. The father stood at the center, arms outstretched, his face serene and terrible at once. Neither young nor old, neither light nor dark, but something that existed between and beyond both. To his left, the daughter, her form suggested both woman and owl, radiant energy seeming to pour from the carved stone itself. To his right, the son, bat-like wings spread wide, his stone face twisted in rage or ecstasy or both. The Mortis gods. Luke had heard the legends, studied the fragmented texts, but he'd never believed they were real. Not truly, not until this moment. Circling the outer edge of the mural, hundreds of Lothwolves were carved in relief, their eyes hollow voids that seemed to watch him from every angle. Luke extinguished his lightsaber and approached the mural slowly, reverently. His hand reached out, fingertips hovering just above the father's outstretched palm. "I need guidance," Luke whispered. "The old order failed. They became arrogant, blind. They trained my father and drove him to darkness through their rigid dogma. How do I not make the same mistakes? How do I?" The stone beneath his fingers grew warm. Luke jerked back, but it was too late. The mural was glowing now, soft blue-white light bleeding from the carved lines spreading like luminous veins across the ancient rock. The father's eyes opened, though they were still stone, and they fixed on Luke with an intensity that made him want to fall to his knees. The daughter's form began to shift, becoming 3-dimensional, a cascade of light that poured from the wall like living water. The sun writhed, his bat wings spreading into actual shadow that oozed and dripped like oil. A sound filled the chamber, wind through ancient trees and the distant howling of wolves, all compressed into a single note that vibrated in Luke's bones. The wall was splitting apart. No, not splitting. Opening. The stone mural was folding back on itself, revealing something behind it that shouldn't exist. A portal. A doorway into a space that existed outside of space. A moment that existed outside of time. Through the opening, Luke saw infinity, swirling cosmic energy in shades of blue and green, like nebulae compressed into liquid form. Countless circular portals floated in the void, each one a window showing frozen or moving images. Battles, births, deaths, moments of triumph and tragedy from across galactic history. The world between worlds. Luke's mind reeled. This was impossible. This was beyond impossible. And yet he could feel it calling to him, pulling at something deep in his core that recognized this place as fundamental to the Force itself. A vision slammed into him with the force of a physical blow. He saw the Jedi Temple on Coruscant burning, saw clone troopers gunning down Jedi Masters in the streets, saw younglings fleeing through smoke-filled corridors while something dark and terrible pursued them, saw Anakin Skywalker, his father but not his father, not yet, screaming in rage as his limbs burned on Mustafar's black shores, saw Padmé dying, her heart broken by betrayal, saw Emperor Palpatine laughing from his throne, but then something else, a branching path, an alternative, a possibility the Force was showing him like a gift or a test, or both. He saw himself standing in the Jedi Council chamber during the Clone Wars, surrounded by masters who should be dead. He saw the moment before the fall, the razor's edge between salvation and catastrophe. He could change it. The Force was offering him the chance to rewrite history itself. Luke staggered backward, his mind trying to process what he was seeing, what he was being offered. Every teaching he'd received from Obi-Wan and Yoda screamed that this was wrong. The Jedi taught acceptance of death, of the natural flow of time, of letting go of attachments. But Luke had already broken those rules. He'd clung to his father when the entire galaxy said Vader was irredeemable. He'd chosen love over doctrine and saved Anakin Skywalker's soul in those final moments. What if he could do more? What if he could save his father before the fall, give Anakin the life he deserved, the life he'd been denied by manipulation, and the Order's blind arrogance? Luke's hand moved to his lightsaber hilt, gripping it like an anchor to reality. He thought of his students, the handful of Force sensitives waiting for him to return, with wisdom he didn't possess. He thought of Leia, his sister, who would never know their father as anything but a monster. He thought of his mother, who he'd never met, who died of a broken heart. He could prevent all of it. But at what cost? What would changing the past do to his present? Would he cease to exist? Would his timeline collapse, replaced by this new one? The Force whispered to him, not with words, but with certainty. Both timelines would exist. Both would be real. He would not be erasing his own history, but creating a branch, a parallel stream where tragedy was averted. Luke stepped toward the portal. The blue-white light washed over him, warm and cold simultaneously. The voices grew louder. He could pick out individual words now. "I hate you," Anakin's voice, raw with rage and agony. "Anakin, you're breaking my heart." Padmé, weeping. "You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you," Obi-Wan, his voice cracking. And his own voice echoing from the future. "I am a Jedi, like my father before me." Luke closed his eyes and stepped through the membrane. The world dissolved. He was falling and flying and standing still all at once. The cosmic void of the world between worlds surrounded him. Infinite pathways of solid light stretching in every direction, connecting portal to portal in a web that defied three-dimensional geometry. The cacophony of voices was overwhelming now. Thousands of moments overlapping, screaming and laughing and weeping all at once. Luke walked forward, or what felt like forward in a space where direction had no meaning. His boots found purchase on pathways that pulsed beneath his feet, like living things. The portals floated past him, or he floated past them. He couldn't tell which. He saw his own history reflected in a dozen different windows. His aunt and uncle's burned corpses smoking in the Tatooine sunset, his hand being severed by his father's blade on Cloud City, his father's mask being removed, revealing Anakin's scarred face one final time. Other portals showed possibilities that never were. Qui-Gon Jinn surviving Naboo, Anakin never being found by the Jedi, Padmé living to raise her children. Luke pushed past them all, his intent focused like a blade. He sought one specific moment, one precise instant in time where everything could still be saved. A massive portal materialized before him, larger than all the others. Through its circular frame, he could see the Jedi Council chamber on Coruscant, bathed in late afternoon light. 12 masters sat in their stone seats, and one stood at the center making a report. Obi-Wan Kenobi, decades younger, still carrying the idealism that would be beaten out of him by war and betrayal. This was it, the final days before Order 66, before the fall, before everything went wrong. Luke reached out, his fingers touching the portal's edge. Energy jolted through him. temporal force so powerful it made every nerve ending in his body scream. The membrane resisted like stretched fabric, requiring an act of will to push through. He thought of his father's last words. "Tell your sister you were right." He thought of the galaxy enslaved for 20 years. He thought of all the lives he could save. Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight, took a breath and stepped through the barrier of time itself. The world dissolved into pure white light, and then the Jedi High Council chamber was silent, save for Obi-Wan Kenobi's voice. He stood at the center of the circular room, datapad in hand, reviewing intelligence on General Grievous's movements through the outer rim. The 12 council members listened with varying degrees of attention, some leaning forward, others appearing to meditate with their eyes half closed. The western windows cast long amber shadows across the polished floor. Outside, Coruscant's endless traffic lanes hummed with speeders, oblivious to the war being planned within these walls, which suggests Grievous will strike at Utapau within the next 3 rotations. Obi-Wan continued. If we position our forces, a pillar of blue-white light erupted in the center of the chamber with a sound like tearing metal and breaking glass. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Every Jedi's hand moved to their lightsaber hilt as 12 Masters surged to their feet. The light was blinding, casting stark shadows that writhed across the walls like living things. Energy crackled through the air, making the hair on everyone's arms stand on end. Master Windu's purple blade snapped to life, followed by 11 others in rapid succession, blue, green, yellow, illuminating the chamber in a rainbow of deadly intent. The light coalesced. A man materialized at the chamber's center, stumbling slightly as if he'd just stepped off a moving platform. He wore simple black robes, worn and travel-stained. A single lightsaber hung at his belt. His face was young but carried lines of grief etched around the eyes and mouth. The kind of aging that came from witnessing horrors, not from years. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The stranger steadied himself, then slowly looked around the circle of ignited blades. His blue eyes were impossibly sad. Luke Skywalker saw them all, masters he'd only known from holographic records and Obi-Wan's stories. Mace Windu, hard and suspicious, his purple blade held in a perfect Vapid guard. Kit Fisto, the Nautilan's perpetual smile frozen in shock. Plo Koon, his anti-ox mask concealing any expression. Shak Ti, her montrals rigid with alarm. And Obi-Wan, young, unburdened by the weight of watching his Padawan fall and his order burn. Still believing the Jedi were invincible. Luke's heart threatened to break seeing him like this. "Identify yourself!" Mace Windu's voice cracked like a whip. He advanced a step, blade raised. "How did you penetrate our defenses?" Luke drew a slow breath, centering himself. When he spoke, his voice was calm, the serenity of someone who had already died once and no longer feared death. "My name is Luke. I come from a future you cannot yet imagine." He met Mace's eyes without flinching. "And I am here to save you from yourselves." The force in the chamber shifted violently. Several council members gasped, their eyes widening as they felt Luke's presence truly register for the first time. It was like standing before a sun, overwhelming, ancient, vast beyond comprehension. This was not a Jedi Master. This was something that transcended the limitations they had placed on themselves. Yoda's ears shot upright. His clawed hand tightened on his gimmer stick as his eyes locked onto Luke with an intensity that could have melted Durasteel. "Strong in the Force you are," the ancient Grandmaster said slowly, suspicion and wonder warring in his voice. "Stronger than any I have felt, save one." He leaned forward. "From the future, you claim? Proof we require." Instead of arguing, Luke simply opened himself to the Force. He dropped every mental shield, every barrier, letting them feel the truth radiating from him like heat from a forge. The council members recoiled as images crashed into their minds, not forced, but offered freely. Fragmentary visions of the temple burning, clone troopers executing their Jedi generals, a galaxy enslaved beneath an empire's boot, death, betrayal, darkness consuming everything they had sworn to protect. Kit Fisto's smile vanished completely, his face going pale beneath his green skin. Plo Koon's hands clenched into fists. Shak Ti touched her forehead as if struck. Obi-Wan's lightsaber wavered, the blue blade dipping toward the floor. Mace Windu's face remained hard, but his voice carried an edge of something that might have been fear. "What kind of vision?" Luke interrupted, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "Memory. In the timeline I come from, Every single one of you in this chamber dies within the next few weeks. The Jedi Order is annihilated. 10,000 years of history erased in a single night. The Republic falls. The Sith rule the galaxy for 2 decades. And it all begins with a single act of betrayal that none of you see coming. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ki-Adi-Mundi stepped forward, his tall Sarian head tilted in that analytical way he had. This is impossible. We would sense the dark side if it were so close. We have been hunting the Sith for 13 years. That arrogance is why you die, Master Mundi. Luke's words cut like a vibroblade, sharp enough to make the Syrian master flinch. The Sith Lord you've been hunting isn't hiding in the shadows. He's been standing in plain sight the entire time, and you've been too blind to see him. Obi-Wan deactivated his lightsaber, the sudden absence of its hum somehow louder than its presence. If you know the identity of the Sith Lord, he said carefully, speak it now, or be named a liar and a threat. Luke turned to face his old mentor directly. Seeing Obi-Wan young and whole, before Tatooine's suns had weathered his face, before grief had broken his spirit, made Luke's throat tighten. I will speak it, Luke said quietly, but not yet. There is someone else who needs to hear this, someone whose soul hangs in the balance. Yoda's ears lowered, his ancient eyes narrowed to slits. Skywalker, you mean? Anakin Skywalker. Yes, Luke said, his voice barely above a whisper. This cannot proceed without him present. Knight Skywalker is on a mission. He's in the temple, Luke corrected. 3 levels below this chamber, sparring with clone troopers in Training Bay 7. He's using Form V exclusively because he's frustrated with the Council's latest decision to deny him the rank of Master. Every Council member went still. That information was not public knowledge. Most of it wasn't even written down anywhere. How could you possibly? Shak Ti began. Because I've lived through this before. Luke's eyes swept the circle of masters. Every conversation, every decision, every moment that leads to your destruction, I know it all. Mace Windu stood frozen for 3 long heartbeats, then turned sharply. Summon Skywalker, immediately. A young Padawan stationed outside the chamber doors bowed and sprinted down the corridor. The minutes that followed stretched like hours. No one sat, no one spoke. The council members kept their lightsabers ignited, forming a ring of deadly light around Luke, who stood perfectly still at the center. His presence in the Force was overwhelming. Not aggressive, but simply vast. Like standing before an ocean and realizing how small you were. Plo Koon studied him carefully. Your fighting stance, your bearing. You carry yourself like someone trained in combat, but also, he paused, also like someone who has known great loss. I have known both, Luke said simply. The chamber doors opened. Anakin Skywalker strode in. Confusion and wariness etched across his young face. Sweat dampened his hair from his training session. His hand rested on his lightsaber hilt, ready to draw at a moment's notice. He looked around the chamber, every master present, every blade ignited, all focused on a stranger in black. Master Windu? Anakin's voice carried that edge of barely controlled emotion he always seemed to have. What's going on? Who is this? Then his eyes met Luke's. Anakin froze mid-step. His Force sense reached out instinctively, touching Luke's presence, and then recoiled like he'd been burned. There was something in this stranger's aura, something that resonated with his own Force signature in a way that should be impossible. Familiar. Impossibly terrifyingly familiar. Luke stared at his father, whole, unblemished, still capable of being saved. No respirator, no charred flesh, no yellow Sith eyes. Just Anakin, young and powerful and already carrying the seeds of darkness that would destroy him. Tears threatened at the corners of Luke's eyes. He suppressed them with an act of will that made his hands tremble. Who are you? Anakin asked again, his voice quieter now, uncertain. This man claims to be from the future, Mace Windu said, his tone flat. He claims to know the identity of the Sith Lord. Anakin's eyes never left Luke's face. And does he? Supreme Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious, the Dark Lord of the Sith. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. He orchestrated the Clone Wars from the beginning, Luke continued, his voice gaining strength. He controls both the Republic and the Separatists. He's been pulling every string for over a decade, engineering this conflict to grant himself emergency powers and position himself to seize absolute control. Impossible. Ki-Adi-Mundi's voice rose. The Chancellor has been a steadfast ally. The Chancellor? Luke cut him off, his voice hard as Durasteel. is a master manipulator who has spent 13 years grooming a specific Jedi Knight to become his apprentice. And in the timeline I come from, Anakin Skywalker becomes that apprentice. He slaughters the Jedi, he helps Palpatine conquer the galaxy, he becomes the monster known as Darth Vader. You're lying, Anakin stepped forward aggressively, his hand tightening on his lightsaber. Palpatine is a good man. He's been my mentor, my friend. Whatever game you're playing, you believe he's your friend because he spent 13 years isolating you from this council. Luke's voice carried infinite compassion mixed with steel. He fed your ego and your fears in equal measure. He made you dependent on him emotionally. He praised you when the council criticized you. He offered you power when they denied you rank. And when the time was right, he exploited the one weakness the Jedi Order, in all its rigid dogma, could never account for. Anakin's hand had moved fully to his lightsaber now, fingers wrapped around the hilt. What weakness? The single word landed like a bomb. Anakin's face went white. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Luke pressed forward knowing the pain this would cause, but unable to stop now. Anakin Skywalker is secretly married to Senator Padmé Amidala of Naboo. They were wed shortly after the Battle of Geonosis 3 years ago. He has been hiding this from the Council in direct violation of the Jedi Code, living in constant fear of discovery. Anakin's face cycled through white to red, fear to rage to something close to panic. How could you possibly... Because in my timeline, Palpatine uses that love to destroy you. Luke's voice cracked slightly. He gives you visions of Padmé dying in childbirth. He tells you the Jedi would let her die because they forbid attachment. He promises you the dark side can save her. And you, desperate and terrified, make a deal with the devil to save the woman you love. Padmé. Anakin's voice was barely audible. Dying? It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your fall to the dark side is what kills her, not complications in childbirth, a broken heart. The man she loved becomes a monster, and she loses the will to live. Obi-Wan took a step forward, his face stricken. Anakin, is this true? Are you married? Anakin's mouth opened, then closed. He looked like a man drowning. Finally, he gave the smallest nod. The admission struck the council like a physical blow. Mace Windu's expression hardened into stone. Yoda's ears drooped. Obi-Wan closed his eyes, his worst suspicions confirmed. But Luke wasn't finished. And before you condemn him for that violation, Luke said, his voice rising, ask yourselves, which is the greater evil? A man loving someone, or a code so rigid that it pushes good people to lie and hide the most fundamental human emotion? The challenge hung in the air, unanswered. Mace Windu finally lowered his lightsaber, though he didn't deactivate it. This is a matter for the Council to address separately. But first, your accusation against the Chancellor. What proof do you offer beyond visions and claims? Luke's eyes hardened. I can tell you the exact layout of Palpatine's private office, including the hidden compartments containing his 2 crimson lightsabers. Details I learned through the Force from my father's fragmented memories and historical records. I can describe Operation Nightfall, the attack on the temple, in detail. I can name Order 66 and explain how the clone army will turn on you through biochips implanted in their brains. He turned slowly, meeting each council member's eyes in turn. In 3 days, Obi-Wan Kenobi will kill General Grievous on Utapau. The war will appear to be over. Palpatine will refuse to give up his emergency powers. Master Windu will lead a strike team to arrest him. You, along with Kit Fisto, Ajin Kolar, and Saesee Tiin. Palpatine will reveal himself, killing Kolar and Tin in seconds. Fisto will last slightly longer. And you, Master Windu, will duel Palpatine to a standstill before Anakin, corrupted by fear for his wife, intervenes and helps the Sith Lord kill you. Luke's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You die by Force lightning, thrown from a window, and the Jedi Order dies with you. Mace Windu's face had gone pale beneath his dark skin. You want proof? Luke continued. You want evidence? I am your evidence. I am the son of the monster Anakin Skywalker becomes. I am living proof that your arrogance, your blind faith in your own righteousness, leads directly to catastrophe. The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, Yoda spoke, his voice heavy with centuries of weight. Sense the truth in you I do, but understand you must. Arrest a sitting Supreme Chancellor we cannot do lightly. Civil war it could spark. Destroyed we could be. Luke met the ancient master's eyes. Grandmaster Yoda, with all due respect, you're already destroyed. You just don't know it yet. The question is whether you're willing to risk your reputation to save your lives and the galaxy. The council chamber doors sealed with a heavy thud, leaving 14 Jedi alone with their impossible decision. Anakin had been asked to step outside while the Masters deliberated, a request that had made his jaw clench, but he'd complied. Luke remained, standing at the center of the circle like a man on trial. Mace Windu paced along the curved wall of windows, the setting sun casting his shadow long across the floor. "We are discussing treason," he said flatly. "Arresting a sitting chancellor without Senate approval, without following Republic law, it's a coup by any definition. A coup to prevent a dictatorship," Luke countered. "Is that not justice?" "Justice and legality are not always the same thing," Shakti said carefully. She remained seated, her hands folded in her lap. "If we act against Palpatine and we're wrong, or even if we're right but cannot prove it, the Senate will turn on us, the public will turn on us, everything the Jedi Order has built over millennia could crumble." "It crumbles anyway," Luke said. His voice carried no anger, only certainty. "In my timeline, you followed the law, you trusted the system, and the system destroyed you." Obi-Wan stood near the center, arms crossed, his face troubled. "There's a larger question here. You speak of institutional failure, Luke, of the Order becoming too entangled with politics, too rigid in our interpretation of the code. Even if we stop Palpatine, assuming we can, those fundamental problems remain." "How?" Ki-Adi-Mundi's voice carried frustration. "The code has guided us for generations. The structure of the Order has made you weak." Luke's words cut through the Syrian Master's objections like a blade. "You call yourselves guardians of peace and justice, but you've become enforcers of political will. You lead armies of slaves into battle." "The clones are not slaves," Mace Windu said sharply. "They're bred in factories, raised to fight, given no choice about their purpose, and would be killed if they tried to leave." Luke's eyes hardened. "What do you call that if not slavery? You violated the very principles you claimed to uphold because it was politically convenient." Plo Koon's filtered voice held a note of pain. "The war forced us to make difficult choices. A manufactured conflict designed by Palpatine to grant himself emergency powers and position the Jedi as military assets rather than peacekeepers. Every choice you've made, every compromise you've accepted, it's all been part of his plan to corrupt and destroy you. Conrad, you judge us harshly for decisions we made under impossible circumstances. I judge you because I've seen where those decisions lead." Luke's voice softened slightly. "I'm not trying to condemn you, Master Fisto. I'm trying to save you. But salvation requires acknowledging your mistakes." Yoda tapped his gimmer stick against the floor, drawing attention. "Speak freely, you do. Critical of the Order you are. Yet a Jedi you claim to be. Trained by whom?" "By Obi-Wan Kenobi," Luke said. "In my timeline, he survived the Purge and went into hiding on Tatooine, watching over me from a distance. When I was 19, he gave me my father's lightsaber and taught me the basics of the Force before sacrificing himself to help me escape the first Death Star, a massive battle station capable of destroying entire planets that the Empire constructed." Obi-Wan's face paled. "I died. You became one with the Force right there, aboard that battle station, in front of me." Luke's voice roughened with memory. "You continued teaching me afterward, appearing as a Force ghost. You and Master Yoda both. The revelation that Jedi could return as Force spirits sent ripples through the Council. Several Masters leaned forward, suddenly intensely interested. Qui-Gon Jinn discovered the technique," Luke continued, "or began to, before Darth Maul killed him on Naboo. He taught it to Master Yoda, who taught it to Obi-Wan. In my timeline, only 3 Jedi ever mastered it: Qui-Gon, Yoda, and Obi-Wan. And my father, at the very end." "Impossible," Ki-Adi-Mundi said. "When a Jedi dies, they return to the Force. They don't maintain individual consciousness. They do if they've learned to let go of everything except their connection to the Force itself." Luke looked at Yoda. "You taught me this, Master. You said death is a natural part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. Mourn them, do not. Miss them, do not. But also failed you, I did. If became a Force ghost, only I did. Then alone you were. No living master to guide you." "I had the Force itself," Luke said, "and the ghosts of 3 masters who loved me. It was enough." Mace Windu returned to his seat, lowering himself heavily. "We're getting distracted from the immediate issue. Palpatine. Assuming he is Darth Sidious, how do we stop him? You've described him as immensely powerful, strong enough to kill 4 council members in seconds. 3, Luke corrected. In my timeline, Ajan Kolar and Saci Tian die almost instantly. Kit Fisto lasts longer but still falls. Only you, Master Windu, can match him in single combat. And you would have won if Anakin hadn't intervened. Mace's expression was unreadable. What stopped me from winning? You had your blade at his throat. He was helpless, disarmed, begging for mercy. But Anakin burst into the room at that exact moment. Palpatine claimed you were trying to kill him, that the Jedi were staging a coup. Anakin, terrified that losing Palpatine meant losing the knowledge to save Padmé, made a choice. He severed your sword hand. Palpatine killed you with Force lightning. Finally, Obi-Wan spoke. So Anakin's fall happens during your arrest of Palpatine, which means if we proceed with this plan, he could fall again. Shock T finished. We could be creating the very circumstance that triggers his transformation into Darth Vader. Or we prevent it entirely, Luke countered. In my timeline, Anakin went to Mace alone, without understanding what was truly at stake. This time, he knows the truth. He knows Palpatine is Sidious. He knows the manipulation. That changes everything. Does it? Mace Windu's voice was harsh. He's in love with Senator Amidala. She's pregnant with his children. If Palpatine offers him the power to save her, what makes you think he won't accept? Because I'll be there. Because instead of isolating him and telling him to wait in the temple while you confront the Sith Lord, which is what you do in my timeline, we'll face Palpatine together. All of us. Overwhelming force. No single combat. No opportunity for manipulation. How many, Plo Koon asked. How many Jedi do we bring? Everyone on this council, plus Anakin, plus me. 14 Jedi against 1 Sith Lord. Luke's voice carried grim satisfaction. Even Sidious cannot stand against those odds. The entire council marching on the Chancellor's office, the political ramifications, are irrelevant if you're all dead, Luke snapped. You keep talking about politics, about legality, about reputation. None of that matters if the Republic becomes an empire and the Jedi are extinct. Your choice is simple. Commit treason and live, or maintain your principles and die. There is another concern, Stas Ali said, her voice quiet but firm. The Thalothian master leaned forward in her seat. You mentioned Order 66, the clone army turning on us. Even if we eliminate Palpatine, that threat remains. Luke nodded, glad to see her thinking ahead. Anakin can disable it. He has access to military command systems through his friendship with Palpatine. Once we've arrested Sidious, Anakin can purge Order 66 from the clone programming before it's activated. The biochips have a remote trigger. Palpatine can activate them all simultaneously. But if we delete the command before he can send it, the clones remain loyal. And if we can't delete it in time? Mace Windu asked. Luke's face hardened. Then 10,000 Jedi die across the galaxy in a single coordinated strike, masters executed by the troopers they trusted. Padawans gunned down on battlefields. Even the younglings in the Temple Creche will be slaughtered when the 501st marches on this building. The horror of that image settled over the council like a shroud. Yoda rose slowly from his seat, leaning heavily on his gimmer stick. He walked to the windows overlooking Coruscant, staring out at the endless city sprawling to every horizon. 900 years I have lived. Grandmaster of this order, I have been for centuries. Seen much I have. The rise and fall of governments, the birth and death of species, wars without end. He turned back to face them, his ancient eyes glistening. But never have I felt so blind, so foolish, so arrogant in my certainty. His voice cracked. Right Luke Skywalker is. Lost our way we have, become what we swore to fight against. Rigid, unfeeling, servants of politics rather than the Force. Master Yoda, Shakti began, but the Grand Master raised a hand. No. Speak truth, I must. Felt it, I have, for years. A disturbance, a shadow, growing, always growing. Ignored it, I did. Trusted in our strength, believed in our righteousness. Pride, that was. Hubris. And for pride, the galaxy will burn unless act now we do. Mace Windu stood as well. You're saying we should proceed with the arrest? Saying I am that choose, we must. Commit treason against a corrupt republic, or allow a Sith Lord to complete his conquest. Yoda looked around the circle. Vote, we shall. All in favor of confronting Palpatine, with or without Senate approval, say aye. "Aye," Obi-Wan said immediately, his voice firm. "Aye," Plo Koon added. "Aye," Kit Fisto said quietly. One by one, the voices joined, some hesitant, some resolved. Shak Ti, Stas Ali, even Ki-Adi-Mundi, though his voice trembled. Mace Windu was the last. He stood in silence for a long moment, his face a mask of internal conflict. Finally he spoke. "If we do this, there's no going back. We become traitors to the republic we swore to serve, enemies of the state. Everything we've built could collapse. Better to be traitors who saved the galaxy than loyal servants who doomed it," Luke said. Mace's jaw clenched. Then, "Aye." The vote was unanimous. Yoda nodded slowly. "Decided it is. Tomorrow, at sunset, march on the Chancellor's office. We will. Tonight, prepare we must. Meditate. Center ourselves in the Force. For face the darkness we will, and uncertain, victory is." "There's one more thing," Luke said. "When we confront Palpatine, don't give him time to react. Don't announce your intentions. Don't try to arrest him politely. The moment we enter that office, he needs to see overwhelming force. 14 ignited lightsabers. No room for negotiation, no opportunity for him to manipulate the situation." "You're asking us to be executioners," Shak Ti said softly. "I'm asking you to be survivors." Luke's voice carried no apology. "Palpatine is the most dangerous being in the galaxy. He's had decades to prepare for this confrontation. Your only advantage is surprise and numbers. Use both, or some of you will die." Obi-Wan moved to the center, standing beside Luke. "There's wisdom in what he says, even if it goes against our training. We've been at war for 3 years, we've led armies and made tactical decisions that resulted in deaths. This is just another battlefield." "No," Mace Windu said. "This is different. This is us choosing to potentially kill the leader of the Republic based on the word of one man we met hours ago." "Based on the word of a man who has proven his knowledge repeatedly," Plo Koon corrected. "Who knows things he shouldn't be able to know. Who carries a presence in the Force unlike anything we've ever encountered. And who may be manipulating us into committing the very treason Palpatine will use to turn the galaxy against us," Ki-Adi-Mundi said. Luke sighed. "You're going to second-guess this decision until the moment you act. That doubt is healthy. It means you understand the gravity of what you're doing. But I need you to trust me. I've lived through the alternative. I've seen the galaxy enslaved. I've watched the Jedi Order die. If you don't act tomorrow, everything I've described will come to pass. Can you live with that?" Finally, Mace Windu nodded. "We proceed as planned. But Luke, if this goes wrong, if you've misled us, know that I will hold you accountable. Because we'll all be dead." The council session ended with that sobering thought. As the Masters filed out to prepare for the confrontation ahead, Luke remained in the chamber, staring out at the Coruscant sunset. Obi-Wan paused at the doorway. "You know, in all of this, you never told us your family name." "Luke." "What?" "Skywalker. My name is Luke Skywalker." Obi-Wan's eyes widened with understanding and grief. Then he nodded slowly and left. Alone in the council chamber, Luke closed his eyes and reached out through the Force, feeling the threads of the future shifting and realigning. Tomorrow, everything would change. He just hoped he'd given them enough warning to survive what was coming. The Senate office building loomed against the evening sky, its spire piercing the amber clouds like a dagger. Luke stood at the head of the formation, 14 Jedi moving through the marble corridors with quiet purpose. Behind him walked Mace Windu and Yoda, flanked by Obi-Wan and Anakin. The remaining council members spread in a defensive perimeter, their robes concealing hands that rested on lightsaber hilts. Senators and aides scattered as the procession passed, sensing something fundamental had shifted in the Force. Some whispered, others stared. A few ran. "They know something's wrong," Obi-Wan murmured. "Good," Luke said without slowing. "Let them talk, let them wonder. By the time they piece together what's happening, it'll be over." Anakin walked stiffly beside his former master, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. He'd barely slept, spending the night in meditation that had brought no peace. Padmé had contacted him through encrypted channels, sensing his distress across the city. He'd told her everything: the time traveler, the accusations against Palpatine, the coming confrontation. She'd believed him without question, which somehow made it worse. If even Padmé thought Palpatine was capable of this deception, then how had Anakin been so blind? They reached the private turbolift to the Chancellor's suite. Two red guards stood at attention, their crimson armor gleaming under the corridor lights. Their helmets were eyeless, expressionless, inhuman. "By order of the Jedi Council," Mace Windu said, his voice carrying absolute authority, "we are here to speak with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Stand aside." The red guards didn't move, didn't speak. Their force pikes remained crossed, blocking the entrance. Luke stepped forward. His presence in the force intensified until the air seemed to vibrate. "You can stand aside, or you can be moved aside. Choose quickly." One of the guards tilted his helmet slightly, as if communicating through internal systems. Then both guards raised their pikes and attacked. They were fast, faster than normal humans had any right to be, enhanced by years of training and possibly chemical augmentation. But they were facing 14 Jedi. Kit Fisto's blade ignited with a snap hiss, deflecting the first pike thrust. Plo Koon's yellow saber came up in a defensive arc. The corridor filled with the hum of weapons and the sharp crack of pike meeting plasma blade. The fight lasted 12 seconds. One guard collapsed with Shaak Ti's blade through his chest. The other fell to Obi-Wan's disabling strike across his weapon hand. The pike clattered to the floor, still sparking. "So much for surprise," Anakin muttered. "They'll know we're here now," Mace Windu said, stepping over the bodies. "They knew the moment we entered the building," Luke replied. He reached the turbolift control and slammed his palm against the activation panel. The doors slid open. 14 Jedi moving with purpose. Palpatine has been monitoring our approach since we left the temple. The turbolift rose through the tower with agonizing slowness. The Jedi stood in silence, each one centering themselves in the Force, preparing for what waited above. Luke could feel their emotions: fear, determination, doubt, resolve. They were committed now. No turning back. The doors opened onto the Chancellor's reception area. 4 more red guards waited, pikes leveled. This time, Luke didn't bother with warnings. He raised both hands and pushed with the Force. The wave of kinetic energy slammed into the guards like a physical wall, hurling them backward through the ornate chamber. They crashed into furniture and walls, their armor cracking, their weapons scattered. "Through the door," Luke commanded. Now, sparks erupted. The heavy door shuddered, then began to slide open with grinding reluctance. Beyond lay Palpatine's private office. The chamber was exactly as Luke remembered from the fragmented memories he'd pieced together through the Force: burgundy walls, polished black floors, the massive curved window offering a commanding view of Coruscant's sunset skyline. And seated at the ironwood desk, silhouetted against the dying light, was Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. He didn't turn as they entered. His voice, when he spoke, carried that familiar, grandfatherly warmth. "Ah, my Jedi friends. What brings so many of you to my humble office at this late hour?" "You're under arrest, Chancellor," Mace Windu said, his lightsaber already ignited. 11 more blades snapped to life, purple, blue, green, yellow, casting the office in a rainbow of deadly light. Only Luke and Yoda kept their weapons holstered, though both were ready to draw in an instant. Palpatine turned slowly in his chair. His face registered surprise, concern, confusion, all perfectly calibrated emotions designed to manipulate. "Arrest? Master Windu, surely there's been some mistake. What am I accused of?" Luke stepped forward, moving through the ring of Jedi until he stood directly before the desk. His eyes locked onto Palpatine's, and for the first time he allowed his full presence in the Force to manifest, not as a beacon of light, but as something that encompassed both light and dark, balance incarnate. Palpatine's eyes widened fractionally. The mask slipped for just a moment. "Treason," Luke said quietly. "Sedition, mass murder, conspiracy to commit genocide, practicing the dark side of the Force, and claiming a Sith title while serving as Supreme Chancellor of the Republic." He paused. "You are Darth Sidious, and your reign ends tonight." Palpatine's face cycled through emotions: surprise, confusion, and then something calculating entered his eyes as he studied Luke more carefully. "I don't believe we've met, young man, and yet you speak with such certainty, such foreknowledge." His voice dropped, losing the grandfatherly tone. "Who are you? I'm the man from a future where you win," Luke said. "Where you kill everyone in this room, where you enslave the galaxy for 2 decades. I'm here to ensure that future never happens." The office fell silent, save for the hum of lightsabers. Palpatine's gaze shifted from Luke to the assembled Jedi, calculating odds, measuring possibilities. "A time traveler," Palpatine said softly. "The world between worlds. I thought the Mortis legends were mythology. It seems I underestimated the Force's sense of irony. Several Jedi gasped. Anakin's face went pale. Master? Anakin's voice broke. You just admitted. Oh, Anakin. Palpatine's eyes found his apprentice-to-be, and genuine affection flickered across his features. My dear boy, did you truly think I would deny it at this point? 14 Jedi stand in my office with weapons drawn. Your friend from the future has ruined 13 years of careful planning. There's no purpose in maintaining the charade. Luke reached into the Force and tore through Palpatine's mental shields like tissue paper. The carefully constructed layers of deception, the false identity, the mask of the kindly politician, all of it shredded in an instant, exposing the raw, dark-side presence beneath. The wave of malevolent power that erupted from Palpatine was overwhelming. It crashed over the assembled Jedi like toxic sludge, making several of them stagger. This was darkness refined to its purest form. Hunger, hatred, and an amusement at the suffering of others that transcended mere sadism into something approaching art. Obi-Wan gasped, his hand flying to his mouth as if he might be sick. Ki-Adi-Mundi's legs buckled, forcing him to lean against the wall. Even Mace Windu's face went gray with the sheer magnitude of corruption that had been hiding in plain sight for over a decade. How? Shock T whispered. How did we not sense this? Because I'm better than you, Palpatine said simply. His voice had transformed completely. No longer warm and paternal, but cold and predatory. 1,000 years of Sith knowledge passed down from master to apprentice. Did you really think your inferior order could detect me? You're children playing with toys you don't understand. He stood slowly, and as he rose, his face seemed to change. The lines deepened, the eyes yellowed slightly, the mask of humanity peeled away to reveal something ancient and terrible beneath. You made a mistake coming here, boy, Palpatine said to Luke. You're powerful, stronger than Yoda, stronger than Windu, perhaps even stronger than I am in raw Force potential. But you lack my training, my experience, my will. His lips curled into a smile. And you've brought my future apprentice directly to me. How thoughtful. Anakin ignited his lightsaber, the blue blade trembling with emotion. I'll never join you. Never. A boy and a girl. Both strong in the Force. Both destined for greatness. But Senator Amidala grows weaker every day. The pregnancy is killing her. I can feel her life force dimming even now from across the city. You're lying, Anakin said, but his voice cracked with fear. Am I? Reach out through your bond with her. Feel the truth. Palpatine's voice dropped to a whisper. She's dying, Anakin, and only I can save her. Only the dark side holds the power to prevent death. Join me, and your family lives. Refuse, and you'll watch them die knowing you could have prevented it. Don't listen to him, Luke's voice cut through the manipulation like a blade. He's lying, Anakin. Padmé survives the pregnancy in my timeline. The twins are born healthy. It's your fall to the dark side that kills her. A self-fulfilling prophecy. He's using the very fear he created to control you. Anakin stood frozen between two futures, his face twisted in agony. Palpatine's smile widened. Such conviction. But tell me, boy from the future, if Padmé survives the birth in your timeline, where is Anakin? Did he resist my offer? Did he remain loyal to these dogmatic fools? Luke's silence was answer enough. Ah. So he fell anyway. How delightful. Palpatine's laugh was like broken glass. You've come all this way, changed all these circumstances, and still you cannot alter the fundamental truth. Anakin Skywalker belongs to the dark side. It's his destiny, his nature. Fighting it is like fighting gravity. His nature is love, Luke said quietly, and love is what saves him in the end. In my timeline, he chose me over you. He killed you to save his son. Love didn't make him fall, it made him rise again. After decades of loyal service, Palpatine countered, after slaughtering Jedi and conquering worlds in my name, if redemption requires such atrocities first, then perhaps it's not worth pursuing. Enough talk. Mace Windu stepped forward, his purple blade raised. Surrender, Chancellor, or we will take you by force. Palpatine looked at the assembled Jedi. 14 masters and knights surrounding him, weapons drawn, no escape route visible. A weaker being would have surrendered, would have begged for mercy, would have tried to negotiate. Palpatine smiled. Very well, he said softly. Let me show you why the Sith are superior. His hands came up, fingers curled like claws. Force lightning erupted from his fingertips, not a single stream, but a storm of blue-white energy that filled the entire chamber. The bolts arced and branched, seeking living targets with malevolent intelligence. 7 lightsabers moved in perfect unison, forming a defensive barrier. The lightning struck the blades and dissipated, absorbed by the plasma, but the intensity was staggering. Even with multiple Jedi sharing the burden, the sheer power behind the attack made arms tremble and knees buckle. Palpatine laughed, and the sound was worse than his attack. Pure joy at causing pain, delight in the struggle of his enemies. This was a being who had transcended normal malice into something approaching religious ecstasy at the suffering of others. Beneath his desk, hidden mechanisms activated. 2 crimson lightsabers flew into his hands, igniting with a sound like screaming metal. The curved hilt spun as Palpatine leaped. No catapulted himself over the desk with force-enhanced strength that defied his apparent age. He was a whirlwind of red death descending on the clustered Jedi, and the real battle began. Palpatine's blades came down like falling guillotines, targeting Kit Fisto and Plo Koon simultaneously. Both masters raised their sabers in defense, but the force behind the strikes drove them backward, their boots scraping grooves in the polished floor. The Sith Lord moved with speed that shouldn't exist in a human body, Form 7 Juyo executed with predatory perfection. Every strike flowed into the next with no wasted movement, no hesitation, no mercy. His fighting style was pure aggression channeled through decades of dark side mastery. Ajan Kolar lunged forward, his blue blade aimed at Palpatine's exposed side. The Sith Lord didn't even look. One crimson saber blocked Kolar's strike, while the other reversed grip and slashed backward, taking the Zabrak master through the chest. Kolar's eyes widened in shock. He crumpled, dead before he hit the ground. "First blood," Palpatine crowed, his voice manic with joy. Satian roared and attacked from the opposite angle, his green blade a blur of strikes meant to overwhelm through sheer volume. Palpatine parried 3, 4, 5 attacks, then simply released one lightsaber, letting it hang suspended in the air through the Force. His now free hand shot forward, fingers splayed. Force lightning erupted at point-blank range. Tin's scream was cut short as electricity coursed through his body, cooking him from within. His lightsaber clattered to the floor. His corpse followed. Stas Ali pressed the attack, her green blade weaving a defensive pattern as she tried to create an opening. Palpatine's suspended saber suddenly flew toward her like a missile. She deflected it, but the distraction cost her. Palpatine's other blade found her midsection. She gasped, falling. Coleman KCH moved to cover her, his blue saber blocking Palpatine's follow-up strike. But the Sith Lord was already spinning, catching his floating saber and bringing both blades around in a devastating combination that overwhelmed KCH's defense. The Angry Master fell, his chest carved open. 20 seconds. 4 Jedi Masters dead. "Come now," Palpatine taunted, catching his floating lightsaber and resuming his two-handed assault. "You outnumber me 10-1. Surely the vaunted Jedi Council can do better than this?" Mace Windu stepped into the fray, his purple blade meeting Palpatine's crossed sabers with a crack that shook the windows. "Vapad," he growled, and his fighting style shifted. No longer defensive Saresu, but Vapad, the form that channeled the opponent's dark side energy back against them. Palpatine felt the shift and laughed harder. "Ah, Windu, I was wondering when you'd show me your true face. You draw on the dark side as surely as I do. You just lie to yourself about it." "I am a Jedi," Mace said through gritted teeth, his blade work accelerating to match Palpatine's fury. "I walk in shadow to serve the light. You walk in shadow because you love it." Palpatine's blade spun, seeking openings that Mace closed with desperate precision. "I can feel your anger, your hatred, your satisfaction at having an enemy you can finally unleash yourself against. We're not so different, you and I." Luke ignited his green blade and joined the assault from Palpatine's right side. Obi-Wan attacked from the left. 3 masters now pressed the Sith Lord, their blades weaving a net of plasma that should have been impossible to escape. Palpatine laughed louder. He leapt backward, hurling his desk through the Force. The massive ironwood furniture flew toward Shakti and Ki-Adi-Mundi. Shak rolled aside. Ki-Adi-Mundi threw up a Force barrier, but the impact drove him to his knees. Palpatine's left hand extended. The 4 sages' statues lining the office walls tore from their pedestals. 4 tons of ancient stone became projectiles, hurtling toward the clustered Jedi with lethal velocity. Plo Koon shattered one statue with a blast of Force energy. Kit Fisto deflected another with his blade, the stone exploding into fragments. But the third caught Shakti across her side, cracking ribs, drawing a cry of pain. She fell, struggling to breathe. The fourth statue nearly struck Yoda before the ancient master stopped it mid-flight with an outstretched hand. The stone froze in the air, trembling with opposing force energies. Yoda's eyes blazed. With a flick of his wrist, he reversed the statue's momentum, hurling it back at Palpatine. The Sith Lord sliced it in half with a contemptuous swipe of his blades. The two pieces crashed into the window behind him, shattering the transparasteel. Wind howled into the chamber, carrying the sounds of Coruscant's traffic lanes and the distant rumble of speeders. Anakin circled around the fighting, looking for an opening. His father's words echoed in his mind. Your fall to the dark side is what kills her, warring with Palpatine's promises. The conflict paralyzed him, making his strikes hesitant, his defense uncertain. Anakin, Palpatine called out, even as he parried Luke's overhead strike and drove Obi-Wan back with a vicious combination. Strike me down and you'll never learn how to save her. The power to prevent death. Only I possess it. She's dying right now. Can't you feel it through your bond? Anakin's blade wavered. He reached out through the Force, feeling for Padmé across the city. She was there, tired, frightened, but alive. The twins' presences blazed strong within her. No sign of death, no indication of danger. He's lying, Anakin said, his voice growing stronger. I feel her. She's fine. You're trying to manipulate me the way you have for 13 years. Palpatine's expression flickered with genuine surprise, then annoyance. Clever boy, not clever enough, but clever. He disengaged from Mace, Luke, and Obi-Wan with a spinning Force-enhanced leap, landing near the broken window. Very well. If you won't join me willingly, I'll simply kill you all and find a new apprentice. The galaxy is full of Force sensitives with potential. He raised both hands and the entire office began to tremble. The chandelier ripped from the ceiling. Furniture tore from its fixtures. Even chunks of the walls began to crumble, pulled inward by invisible force. He's collapsing the room, Ki-Adi-Mundi shouted. Shield yourselves, Yoda commanded. 6 Jedi threw up Force barriers simultaneously, creating a dome of protection. Debris hammered against the invisible shields. Stone, metal, wood, all accelerated to lethal velocity by Palpatine's power. The barriers held, but the strain showed on every face. Sweat poured down temples. Hands trembled. Palpatine laughed, sustaining the attack with one hand while using the other to hurl Force lightning at the barriers, testing for weaknesses. How long can you maintain this? Minutes? Hours? I can keep this up for days if necessary. And the moment you drop your shields, you die. Palpatine was right. This was a war of attrition they couldn't win. They needed to end this now. He reached deeper into the Force than he ever had before, reached for the connection he'd felt in the world between worlds. That sense of the Force as a living, conscious entity with its own will, and he called to it. Help us, Luke thought desperately. Not for our sake, but for the galaxy. For all the lives that will be lost if this monster wins. The Force answered. A wave of light-side energy erupted from Luke's core, expanding outward in a sphere of pure illumination. Where it touched Palpatine's dark side assault, the debris simply disintegrated, not destroyed, but transformed, returning to the cosmic Force itself. Palpatine's eyes widened. How are you? Because I don't fight for victory, Luke said, his voice resonating with power. I fight for balance, and the Force itself has chosen which side it's on. The light continued expanding, pushing back the darkness. Palpatine's connection to the Force began to fray, his attacks weakening, his defenses crumbling. Now, Mace Windu shouted. All 10 remaining Jedi struck simultaneously. Mace's Vapad found Palpatine's right shoulder, severing the arm at the joint. The crimson lightsaber fell, still ignited, tumbling toward the broken window. Kit Fisto's blade pierced the Sith Lord's left thigh. Plo Koon's yellow saber slashed across his back. Obi-Wan's strike took his remaining hand at the wrist. Palpatine screamed, a sound of rage and pain and disbelief that shook the chamber. He collapsed to his knees, disarmed, dismembered, defeated. The 10 Jedi formed a circle around him, their blades all pointed inward, creating a cage of plasma. Palpatine knelt at the center, bleeding, gasping, but still somehow smiling. You've won nothing, he hissed, his voice weak but defiant. Kill me and I become a martyr. The Senate will never believe your accusations. You'll be traitors, hunted, destroyed politically if not physically. Luke stepped forward, pulling a small recording device from his robes. You mean this recording of everything you just said and did? The part where you admitted to being Darth Sidious? The part where you used Force lightning and killed 4 Jedi Masters? The part where you tried to murder the Supreme Chancellor? Oh wait, that's you. Palpatine's smile vanished. You recorded every second since we entered this room? Luke knelt to bring his face level with the Sith Lords. The Senate will see you transform. They'll hear you confess. They'll watch you murder Jedi Masters with your bare hands. There won't be any doubt. No political maneuvering. You're finished. For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Palpatine's face. Mace Windu deactivated his lightsaber and pulled out force-suppressing binders. Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, I arrest you for crimes against the Republic and the Jedi Order. He snapped the binders onto Palpatine's remaining wrist and ankles. You'll stand trial. You'll be convicted. And you'll spend whatever remains of your miserable life in a cell, cut off from the Force, forgotten. Forgotten? Palpatine's laugh was bitter. I am Darth Sidious, heir to Darth Bane's legacy, master of the grand plan. I will never be... Luke slapped him. Not a Force-enhanced strike, just an open-handed slap that snapped Palpatine's head to the side. You're nothing. You're a failed Sith Lord who got caught. That's how history will remember you. Not as a conqueror, not as an emperor, just as the man who almost succeeded but didn't. The light left Palpatine's eyes. His body sagged, the fight draining out of him completely. Republic security forces burst into the office moments later, drawn by the sounds of combat and the broken window. They stopped in the doorway, staring at the scene. 4 dead Jedi Masters, a destroyed office, and Supreme Chancellor Palpatine kneeling in binders with 10 lightsabers still pointed at his head. The lead officer stammered, looking between the Jedi and the Chancellor. We don't. Who has jurisdiction over? This man is a Sith Lord and a traitor to the Republic, Mace Windu said, his voice carrying absolute authority despite the chaos around them. We have evidence. Luke held up the recording device. This contains his full confession and visual evidence of his crimes. Play it for the Senate. Let them decide. The political implications were staggering. The Jedi had just arrested the Supreme Chancellor, but the evidence of battle was undeniable, and the bodies of 4 Jedi Masters spoke to the danger that had existed in this room. Finally, the lead officer nodded. We'll take him into custody pending Senate review. Slowly, the security forces moved forward. They took custody of Palpatine, who said nothing as they led him away. His eyes, though, found Anakin one final time. You could have been my greatest achievement, Palpatine said softly. Such a waste. Then he was gone. The office fell silent save for the wind through the broken window and the labored breathing of 10 exhausted Jedi. They'd won. Against all odds, they'd won. But the cost was evident. 4 Masters dead, several others wounded, and the entire Jedi Order now branded as traitors to the Republic they'd served for millennia. Luke extinguished his lightsaber and looked at Anakin, who stood trembling, his face streaked with tears. It's over, Luke said gently. You didn't fall. You stayed in the light. Your family is safe. Anakin collapsed to his knees and wept. Outside, the Coruscant sunset painted the sky in shades of blood and fire. And in a cell deep beneath the Senate building, Darth Sidious, once Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, sat in darkness and contemplated his failure. The Sith's grand plan, 1,000 years in the making, was over. The Jedi Temple burned with searchlights instead of flames. Republic security forces surrounded the building, their vehicles parked in concentric rings around the ancient structure. Holonews crews jostled for position, their cameras capturing every angle of what the media was already calling the Jedi insurrection. Above, military gunships circled like carrion birds, their spotlights raking across the temple's 5 spires. Inside the council chamber, the emergency session had been running for 6 hours straight. The Senate vote was 312 to 188, Bail Organa's hologram said, his face haggard. The senator from Alderaan had been fighting for the Jedi Order since the moment news of Palpatine's arrest broke. They've declared the Jedi Order in violation of Republic law. Your arrest of the Chancellor without Senate approval constitutes an illegal coup attempt. All Jedi assets are frozen. Your legal authority as peacekeepers is revoked. There's a warrant for the arrest of the entire council. Mace Windu's jaw clenched. We provided evidence. The recording shows Palpatine admitting to being Darth Sidious. It shows him killing Jedi Masters, which the Senate claims is fabricated, Bail said bitterly. They're saying you used force mind tricks to make Palpatine appear to confess, that you staged the entire confrontation to justify seizing power. Senator Mothma and I presented the evidence to every committee we could access. Most senators won't even watch it. Those who do dismiss it as Jedi manipulation. Padmé Amidala's hologram flickered to life beside Bail's. Her pregnancy was visible now, her hands resting protectively on her swollen belly. They're frightened. Palpatine had been Chancellor for 13 years. He built a coalition of support across hundreds of star systems. His loyalists control most of the Senate's key committees. They're painting this as a military coup by a religious order that's been too powerful for too long. Then we've failed, Shakti said quietly, still recovering from her injuries. We stopped Sidious but destroyed ourselves in the process. Not destroyed, Luke said from his position near the windows. He'd been watching the Republic forces gather for hours. Transformed. There was never a scenario where you arrested Palpatine and the Senate simply thanked you and moved on. The Order had to die, but it can be reborn. Traitors to the Republic we served for millennia. Then stop serving them, Luke said, turning to face the Council. You spent 1,000 years becoming entangled in Republic politics. You became generals, diplomats, enforcers of government will. You lost sight of what Jedi are supposed to be, guardians of balance, not servants of politicians. You're suggesting we leave Coruscant? I'm suggesting you reclaim your independence, Luke said. The Jedi existed for 25,000 years before the Republic recruited you. You had your own temples, your own governance, your own purpose beyond political service. Return to that. Leave this corrupt system behind and rediscover what it means to be Jedi. Leave how? Ki-Adi-Mundi gestured to the windows where searchlights continued their sweep. We're surrounded. They've locked down all temple hangars. Any ship that tries to launch will be shot down. Not if we overwhelm them with numbers, Anakin said. He'd been quiet since the confrontation with Palpatine, processing everything, but now his tactical mind engaged. We have 73 transport ships in the subterranean hangars. If we launch them simultaneously from multiple points, they can't stop all of them. Some will get through. Plo Koon's filtered voice carried concern. And those that don't? The pilots and passengers killed? Public trials, imprisonment, maybe worse. We leave now, or we don't leave at all. There are 10,000 Jedi in this temple, Mace Windu said. Masters, knights, Padawans, younglings, support staff, archivists, healers. Evacuating everyone would take days even without military interference. Luke met Mace's eyes. Then you have one day. Use it. The council looked at each other, the weight of the decision crushing. Finally, Yoda rose from his seat. Right, Luke Skywalker is, the ancient Grand Master said. Failed we have to see what before our eyes was. Corrupted the Republic has become. Serve it, we can no longer. Leave we must. He turned to the holographic images of Bail and Padmé. Senator Organa, Senator Amidala, help us, can you? Provide cover for our evacuation. I'll file motions for emergency hearings. Demand the evidence be independently reviewed. Tie the Senate up in procedural debates. It'll buy you hours at most, but it's something. I'll organize protests, Padmé added. Get citizens on the streets demanding the Jedi be heard. Create enough chaos that the military has to split their focus. Thank you, Obi-Wan said softly. Both of you. You're risking your careers, possibly your lives. The Jedi saved the Republic more times than history records, Bail said. The least we can do is help you leave it. The Council turned to the enormous task ahead, evacuating 10,000 people from a building surrounded by hostile forces. We'll need a destination, Shakti said, wincing as she shifted her injured ribs. Somewhere remote enough that the Republic can't immediately pursue. Somewhere with resources to sustain our numbers. Tython. Every head turned toward him. The ancient Jedi homeworld. Obi-Wan's voice carried wonder and skepticism. The planet's location was lost thousands of years ago. The hyperspace routes to the deep core are unmapped, constantly shifting. In my timeline, the Jedi rediscovered Tython decades from now. I studied the navigation charts. I can guide your ships through the deep core. Mace Windu's expression was unreadable. You're asking us to trust you with the survival of the entire Order. I'm asking you to trust the Force, Luke corrected. It brought me here for a reason, not just to stop Palpatine, but to help you become what you were always meant to be. Tython is where the Jedi began. It's where you'll begin again. Trust you, I do. Trust the Force, I do. To Tython we go. The evacuation began at dawn. Every Jedi in the temple mobilized with military precision. Masters supervised the loading of ships while knights herded Padawans toward hangars. The youngest children were carried by healers, confused and frightened by the sudden urgency. In the archives, Jocasta Nu and her staff worked frantically to pack millennia of knowledge, holocrons, manuscripts, artifacts, anything that could be carried. Anakin coordinated with the Temple Guard, organizing defensive positions in case Republic forces stormed the building. He worked alongside clone commanders who'd served under him during the war. Men who technically should arrest him but who owed their lives to Jedi leadership too many times to forget. "Sir," a clone captain said quietly, removing his helmet. "Rex, Captain Rex of the 501st. My men and we can't officially help you, but we can be slow to respond when you start launching ships. Give you a window." Anakin clasped the clone's shoulder. "Thank you, Rex, for everything." In the lower hangar levels, 73 transport ships hummed with pre-flight systems coming online. Pilots ran final checks, engineers bypassed security lockdowns, children clutched stuffed animals and stared at the massive vessels with wide eyes. Luke moved through the organized chaos like a ghost, helping where he could, offering encouragement, feeling the threads of the future shifting with every decision made. This was right. This was necessary. The old order had to die so a new one could be born from its ashes. Padmé found Anakin in the command center, coordinating launch sequences with military efficiency that came from years of warfare. "You're not going with them," she said. Not a question. Not yet. Anakin didn't look up from his datapad. "Someone needs to stay behind and make sure everyone gets out. I'll take the last ship." "Then I'm staying with you. Padmé, you're 8 months pregnant with twins." "Which is why I'm staying," she interrupted. "You're my husband, our children's father. If you're staying, so am I." Their eyes met, and Anakin saw the absolute resolve in her expression. He knew better than to argue. "Okay, together? Always?" In the streets, thousands of citizens, organized by Padmé's underground network, protested the Jedi's treatment, blocking military vehicle access to the Temple District. At precisely 0800 hours, the first transport launched. It burst from the Temple's northern hangar, engines screaming, climbing vertical through Coruscant's traffic lanes. Alarms blared. Republic gunships scrambled. Orders crackled across military channels. Then the second ship launched, and the third. And suddenly all 73 transports were airborne simultaneously, spreading across the Coruscant sky like a flock of massive birds taking flight. The Republic military couldn't track them all, couldn't intercept them all. Some ships took fire. One transport's shields failed, forcing it to make an emergency landing in the Senate District. But the others climbed toward orbit, toward freedom, toward the hyperspace jump points that would carry them away from Coruscant forever. In the command center, Anakin watched the telemetry with fierce satisfaction. 68 ships clear, 5 grounded but crews evacuated safely. No casualties. "Then we go," Luke said. The last transport waited in the main hangar, engines idling. Only a skeleton crew remained. Anakin, Padmé, Luke, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Mace Windu, and a handful of temple guards to ensure no one was left behind. They ran through empty corridors that had been filled with life just hours before. The temple felt like a tomb now, silent, abandoned, hollow. 1,000 years of history left behind in a single day. The last transport lifted off just as Republic forces breached the temple's main entrance. They found nothing but empty chambers and darkness. The Jedi were gone. The fleet of transports hung in space beyond Coruscant's orbit, waiting for the final ship to arrive. When it did, docking with the flagship that carried the Council, a cheer went up across the comm channels. They'd done it. They'd escaped. Luke stood on the flagship's bridge, entering coordinates into the navigation computer. Coordinates that led into the deep core, the most dangerous region of the galaxy, where stars clustered so densely that normal hyperspace travel was impossible. "This will take us through gravitational anomalies that can tear ships apart," Mace Windu said, reading the route over Luke's shoulder. "One miscalculation and the entire fleet is lost." "Trust the Force," Luke said simply. Yoda joined them on the bridge, his small form barely visible over the command consoles. "Ready are you? Lead us you will?" "I'm ready." Luke activated the comm, broadcasting to all 73 ships. "This is Luke Skywalker. I'm transmitting navigation data now. Stay in formation, trust your pilots, trust the Force. We're going home." The fleet jumped to hyperspace as one, leaving Coruscant and the corrupt Republic behind. The blue-white tunnel of faster-than-light travel surrounded them, and for the first time in months, Luke felt genuine hope. The Jedi Order was free, and Tython was waiting. Tython emerged from hyperspace like a jewel carved from living emerald. The planet hung in the viewport, vast forests covering entire continents, mountain ranges that pierced cloud layers, oceans so blue they seemed to glow with internal light. But what struck every Jedi who saw it was the Force. Even from orbit, the planet's presence was overwhelming, ancient, powerful, alive in ways no world should be. "By the Force," Obi-Wan whispered, pressing his hand against the transverse steel. "I can feel it from here. It's like the planet itself is singing." Luke stood beside him, a sad smile on his face. Tython is one of the strongest Force nexuses in the galaxy. The birthplace of the Jedi Order, 25,000 years before the modern Jedi. This is where it all began. This is where you'll remember what you forgot. The fleet descended through Tython's atmosphere, guided by Luke's knowledge of safe landing zones near the ancient temple complexes. The transports settled onto moss-covered stone landing platforms that had been built millennia ago by Force users whose names were lost to history. When the boarding ramps lowered, 10,000 Jedi stepped onto sacred ground. Younglings ran through grass that hadn't been trampled in 10,000 years, laughing as the Force responded to their presence. Flowers blooming where they stepped, birds landing fearlessly on outstretched hands. Padawans stared in wonder at trees with silver bark and blue-green leaves that whispered secrets in languages older than Basic. Masters knelt and wept, feeling the Force flow through them with a purity they'd forgotten was possible. Yoda descended his transport's ramp slowly, leaning heavily on his gimmer stick. When his feet touched Tython's soil, he gasped. Tears streamed down his ancient face. "Home," he whispered. After 900 years, home. The Jedi temple ruins lay a kilometer from the landing site, massive structures of stone and crystal that had somehow weathered millennia. Vines covered walls, trees grew through courtyards, but the bones of the complex remained intact, waiting for inheritors. Luke led the council through the ruins, pointing out significant chambers. The main meditation hall can hold thousands. The training grounds are beyond those trees, open spaces for lightsaber practice and Force exercises. The archives are underground, protected from the elements. Most of the original texts are unreadable, but the knowledge encoded in the architecture itself is priceless. "This will take years to restore," Ki-Adi-Mundi said, studying a collapsed section of wall. "Decades, perhaps. Then you'll have time," Luke said. "Time to rebuild. Time to remember what Jedi are supposed to be. Time to train a new generation without the corruption of politics." Anakin explored alongside Padmé, who walked slowly, one hand on her swollen belly. The twins were active today, responding to Tython's Force presence with kicks and movements that made Padmé wince. "They feel it," she said, smiling despite her discomfort. "The planet, the Force. They're already attuned to it. They'll be born here," Anakin said, the realization settling over him. Not on Coruscant, not on Naboo, on the Jedi homeworld. Luke and Leia will be the first children born on Tython in 10,000 years. But even on Tython, the galaxy's problems couldn't be ignored. In the restored communications center, one of the first rooms the Jedi engineers brought back online, holographic displays showed the chaos spreading across Republic space. With Palpatine arrested and the Jedi Order in exile, the carefully orchestrated clone wars were collapsing into genuine anarchy. Count Dooku, no longer receiving orders from his Sith master, had declared himself supreme commander of the Confederacy and was attempting to consolidate separatist forces. General Grievous continued hunting Jedi, unaware that his remaining targets had already fled Coruscant. Clone armies found themselves leaderless, their Jedi generals gone, their purpose suddenly unclear. "The war is eating itself," Mace Windu said, studying tactical displays that showed battles erupting across dozens of star systems. Without Palpatine orchestrating both sides, without Jedi leading Republic forces, the entire structure is collapsing. "Good," Luke said. He stood at the center of the war room, Anakin and Obi-Wan flanking him. "Let it collapse. This war was always a lie. Better to end it in chaos than let it continue serving a Sith Lord's agenda." "People are dying," Shakti said quietly. "Civilians caught in the crossfire. Worlds under siege. They were dying before," Luke countered. "But now you can actually help them. Not as Republic generals enforcing political will, but as Jedi, true Jedi, bringing aid where it's needed, mediating conflicts, protecting the innocent. You're suggesting we become wandering peacekeepers, operating independently of any government. I'm suggesting you remember what you were before the Republic recruited you. Luke activated a star chart highlighting systems in crisis. Dooku is on Sereno. Grievous is hunting Jedi on Utapau. The Separatist Council is in hiding on Mustafar. You know where the leadership is. Strike teams can end this war in days instead of letting it drag on for months. Anakin stepped forward, studying the chart with a warrior's eye. Dooku first. He's the political head of the Confederacy. Without him, the Separatist systems lose cohesion. Many will sue for peace. And Grievous? Plo Koon asked. I'll handle him, Obi-Wan said. I know his tactics, his weaknesses. Give me 3 knights and access to Utapau's underground resistance. We can eliminate him within 48 hours. Yoda nodded slowly from his seat. No longer serve the Republic, we do. But serve the Force, we must. End this war, we shall, on our terms. The mission to Sereno launched 2 days later. Anakin led the strike team, himself, Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, and Luke. They approached the planet in a small, unmarked transport, avoiding Separatist patrols through a combination of stealth and Luke's unsettling knowledge of patrol routes that shouldn't exist yet. Dooku's palace sat atop a hill overlooking the capital, a monument to aristocratic wealth and ancient privilege. They infiltrated through underground passages Luke claimed to know from historical records. The guards never saw them coming. They found Dooku in his private study, reviewing battle reports, his elegant features drawn with exhaustion. He looked up as 4 Jedi entered, lightsabers ready, but not yet ignited. Skywalker, Dooku said, his voice carrying neither fear nor surprise. I wondered when you would come. The Jedi Order falls, Sidious is captured, and yet here you stand. How remarkable. It's over, Dooku, Anakin said. The Separatist movement, the war, all of it. Palpatine orchestrated everything. You were a pawn, just like the rest of us. Dooku's face remained impassive, but something flickered behind his eyes. Rage, shame, grief. I suspected, he said quietly. Not at first, but in recent months I began to feel used, manipulated. Sidious promised me we would reform the Republic together. Instead, he was using me to destroy it. Then help us end this, Mace Windu said. Order the Separatist forces to stand down, negotiate peace. You have the authority, and in exchange, we don't kill you, Luke said simply. You'll stand trial for war crimes. You'll likely spend years in prison, but you'll live. And maybe if you're sincere in your regret, you'll have a chance at redemption. Dooku studied them for a long moment, then stood slowly. I loved Qui-Gon Jinn like a son. His death on Naboo, I blamed the Jedi Council for their arrogance, their failure to act on his warnings. Sidious exploited that grief, turned it into hatred. I became what I swore to fight against. Then stop being that, Anakin said. Make a different choice, end the war. Save whatever lives you can. His voice, when he spoke, carried across Separatist command channels to every ship, every base, every battle group. This is Count Dooku, Supreme Commander of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. I am ordering an immediate ceasefire across all fronts. All Separatist forces are to stand down and await further orders. The war is over. I repeat, the war is over. The comm crackled with confusion, disbelief, demands for confirmation. Dooku deactivated it and turned back to the Jedi. It's done. Though I suspect many systems will ignore the order. The Separatist movement was never truly unified. It was always a coalition of grievances held together by Sidious's manipulation. Then we'll deal with them individually, Mace Windu said. He produced binders and secured Dooku's wrists. You're under arrest, but thank you for making the right choice, even if it came late. On Utapau, Obi-Wan's mission went exactly as Luke had predicted. General Grievous died to a well-placed blaster shot through his chest cavity, his cybernetic body collapsing into the sinkhole city's depths. The droid armies, receiving Dooku's ceasefire order and then losing their military commander within hours of each other, began shutting down across the galaxy. On Mustafar, Republic commandos raided the Separatist Council's hiding place, capturing the Trade Federation's leadership without Jedi involvement. They would face trial for profiteering from war. Within a week, the Clone Wars were effectively over. Systems across the Outer Rim that had been devastated by conflict began the slow process of rebuilding. The Republic Senate, leaderless and fractured by Palpatine's arrest, descended into political chaos as various factions competed for power. But without an active war to justify emergency measures, the militarization began to reverse. On Tython, the Jedi Council convened in the restored meditation hall to discuss their new role in the galaxy. "The Republic wants us back," Bail Organa's hologram reported. He'd become the Jedi's primary liaison with the broader galaxy. "A coalition of moderate senators is proposing a formal pardon in exchange for your return to Coruscant and resumption of peacekeeping duties." "No," Yoda said firmly. "Return, we will not. Serve governments, we will not. Independent, the Jedi Order must be." "Then what will you do?" Bail asked. "How will you survive without Republic funding and support?" "We'll do what Jedi did for 20,000 years before the Republic recruited us," Obi-Wan said. "We'll travel the galaxy as wandering peacekeepers. We'll mediate disputes. We'll protect the innocent. We'll train Force sensitives not to be soldiers, but to be guardians of balance. And we'll accept what aid communities can offer in gratitude, but we won't serve any government's agenda." Padmé's hologram appeared beside Bail's. She looked exhausted but proud. "Then I'm joining you, officially resigning my Senate seat and coming to Tython. The Republic has hundreds of senators. The Jedi have one pregnant woman who understands politics and isn't bound by their dogma." She smiled. "Besides, my husband is there, my children will be born there. That's where I belong." Anakin's face split into a grin. Luke, standing nearby, felt tears threatening. In his timeline, Padmé had never had this choice. Never had the chance to simply choose love over duty and survive the consequences. The meeting ended with Bail agreeing to send Padmé on the next supply run to Tython. The council dispersed, leaving Luke alone with Yoda in the ancient meditation hall. "Thank you," Luke said quietly, "for trusting me, for taking the leap." "Thank you, young Skywalker," Yoda replied. "Saved us, you have, not just from Sidious, but from ourselves. A better order we will build, one that would make Qui-Gon proud." "It already does," Luke said, and he meant it. The Clone Wars were over, the Jedi were free, and a new era was beginning. 1 month after the evacuation, Tython bloomed around the Jedi encampment like a garden responding to careful tending. The ancient temple structures had been cleared of debris, their crystal-embedded walls polished until they caught sunlight and scattered rainbows across courtyards. Younglings trained in open spaces while masters supervised, their teaching methods already shifting. Less rigid discipline, more encouragement of individual expression within the bounds of wisdom. The planet itself seemed pleased with its new inhabitants. Trees grew faster than natural, their branches providing shade over meditation areas. Streams altered their courses slightly to flow nearer to the settlement. Animals approached without fear, as if recognizing kindred spirits. Luke walked through a secluded grove near the western cliffs, where waterfalls cascaded down moss-covered stone. He could feel his time here drawing to a close, the world between worlds calling to him like a distant song, reminding him he didn't belong in this timeline. But first, there was something he needed to do. He found Anakin and Padmé in the grove, sitting beside the largest waterfall. Padmé's pregnancy was in its final days now. She moved slowly, one hand always on her swollen belly, her face showing the exhaustion and radiance of imminent motherhood. Anakin sat behind her, supporting her weight, his hands resting over hers on the twins. They looked peaceful, whole, nothing like the shattered images Luke carried from his own timeline. "May I join you?" Luke asked, his voice nearly lost beneath the water's roar. Anakin looked up, started to rise, but Luke waved him down. "Stay, please. I need to talk, while I still can." For a long moment he simply watched them, his father young and unburdened, his mother alive and glowing with life. The reality of what he'd accomplished struck him fully for the first time. "You've been avoiding us," Padmé said gently. "Since we arrived on Tython, Anakin says you disappear for days at a time." "I've been preparing," Luke said, "helping the Council plan the new Order's structure, teaching Masters about techniques from my timeline, making sure everything's in place before I leave." "Leave?" Anakin's voice carried alarm. "You're going back? To your timeline?" "I have to. The world between worlds won't let me stay indefinitely. I can feel it pulling at me, like a rope tied around my chest growing tighter each day. Soon it'll be too strong to resist." Padmé leaned forward as much as her belly allowed. "But you've saved us, changed everything. Don't you want to see what you've built? Watch the new order grow." "I want that more than almost anything," Luke admitted, his voice rough. "But I have students in my own time. People depending on me, I can't abandon them, even for this. Anakin studied Luke's face, the lines around his eyes, the way he carried himself like someone bearing invisible weight. There's something you haven't told us. Something about why you focus so much on saving me specifically. Luke's hands trembled. He'd been avoiding this conversation, but he owed them the truth. Owed his father the truth. You're right, Luke said quietly. I haven't been entirely honest about my connection to you, Anakin. You said you were from the future, that you came back to stop the Jedi from falling. That in your timeline, I became Darth Vader. Anakin's voice was steady, but Luke could hear the fear beneath it. What else is there? In my timeline, Padmé gives birth to twins shortly after your fall to the dark side. A boy and a girl. The boy is raised on Tatooine by your stepbrother Owen Lars. He grows up believing his father was a navigator on a spice freighter who died before he was born. He doesn't learn the truth until he's 19 years old. Anakin's eyes widened. Understanding began to dawn. That boy's name, Luke continued, tears streaming down his face now, is Luke Skywalker. I'm your son, Anakin. Your son from a future where you fell to darkness and I barely knew you, where the only time we truly spoke was when you were dying, redeemed but destroyed in my arms. The words hung in the air between them. Padmé's hand flew to her mouth. Anakin sat frozen, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, joy, and overwhelming grief. My son? Anakin's voice broke on the word. You're my son? Yes. Luke couldn't stop crying now. And I came back not just to save the Jedi Order. I came back to save you, to give you the life you deserved, to let you be the father you never got to be. Because in my timeline, I loved you anyway. Loved Darth Vader, the monster, because I could sense the good man buried beneath the machinery and hatred. If I loved you as Vader, how could I not try to save Anakin? Anakin closed his eyes, his entire body shaking. I became a monster. I fell to the dark side, and you still loved me. I never stopped believing there was good in you, even when everyone else said Vader was irredeemable, even when you cut off my hand and tried to turn me to the dark side, even when the Emperor was torturing me and you stood watching. Luke's voice strengthened. Because you were my father, and sons don't give up on their fathers. Padmé was crying too, her hands cradling her belly. The girl, you said there was a girl. Leia, Luke said, smiling through his tears. My sister, your daughter. She's raised by Senator Bail Organa and his wife on Alderaan. She grows up to be a leader of the rebellion against the Empire. Strong, brilliant, stubborn as hell. She's everything you'd want in a daughter. Does she, in your timeline, does she ever know me? Anakin asked. Luke hesitated, then decided on truth. She knows Vader. She meets him several times during the war. He interrogates her, tortures her for information, destroys her entire planet to break her spirit. She hates Vader with absolute conviction. Anakin made a sound like he'd been physically struck. I killed her planet? My own daughter's home? Vader did, not you. There's a difference. Luke leaned forward urgently. That's why I'm telling you this, so you understand what's at stake. So you know that every choice matters, every moment of choosing light over darkness. You can be the father Leia never had, the father I barely knew. You can love your children and watch them grow and be there for every moment. Anakin stood abruptly, turning away, his hands covering his face. His shoulders shook with sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken. Padmé struggled to her feet, moving to him, wrapping her arms around him from behind. I'm so sorry, Anakin choked out. I'm so sorry for what I did to you, for the father I never was, for everything. Luke rose and approached slowly. You have nothing to apologize for. Not anymore, not in this timeline. You stayed in the light. You didn't fall. You're going to be the father I always deserved. Anakin turned and pulled Luke into a fierce embrace. Father and son held each other while Padmé wrapped her arms around both of them, the three of them bound together by grief and joy and impossible second chances. I swear to you, Anakin said, his voice muffled against Luke's shoulder. I swear I will never fall, never become that monster. I will spend every day being worthy of you. You already are, Luke whispered. You already are, Dad. The word, Dad, broke something in Anakin. He held Luke tighter, the son from another timeline who had saved him from a fate he would never now experience. When they finally separated, Padmé took Luke's hand. Tell me about her, about Leia. Everything you remember. He told them about Leia's strength, her political genius, her fierce loyalty. He told them about her marriage to Han Solo, a smuggler with a good heart. He told them about her son, their grandson, and the tragedy that befell him. He told them everything, painting a picture of the daughter they would now get to raise instead of lose. "She'll be born here," Padmé said, looking around at the ancient grove. "On Tython, the first children born on the Jedi homeworld in 10,000 years. Luke and Leia Skywalker." "You're keeping the names?" Luke asked, surprised. "They're their names," Anakin said simply. "In every timeline, in every universe. Our children are Luke and Leia. We wouldn't change that." Luke felt something crack inside his chest. The last piece of armor he'd been wearing since he arrived in this timeline. These people loved him, not as the stranger who'd saved them, but as family, as their son, even though he'd never been born to them in this reality. "There's something else you should know," Luke said. "In my timeline, when Padmé gives birth, she names both children but dies shortly after. She hides them from Vader, Luke on Tatooine, Leia on Alderaan. We grow up never knowing each other until we're adults fighting in the rebellion." "That won't happen here," Padmé said firmly, her hand on her belly where the twins kicked. "I'm not dying. The visions were false, created by Palpatine to manipulate Anakin, and these children will grow up together knowing they're loved, knowing they're safe." "I know," Luke said. "That's why I came, to give you all this chance." They sat together as the sun moved across the sky, casting shifting patterns of light through the waterfall's spray. Anakin asked questions about Luke's life, his training, his battles, his struggles to rebuild the Jedi Order. Luke answered honestly, painting a picture of a future that would never happen now, preserved only in memory. "When I was dying," Anakin said quietly, "when Vader was dying, what were my last words to you?" Luke's voice was barely audible over the waterfall. "You said, 'Tell your sister you were right.' Right about there being good in me. Right about love being stronger than hate." "I was right," Anakin said. "Love is stronger. It saved me once, at the end of everything. In this timeline, it's saving me at the beginning. Because you loved me enough to cross time itself." "I had to," Luke said simply. "You're my father. I couldn't leave you in darkness when I had the power to bring you into light." Padmé moved closer to Luke, taking his face in her hands. "Thank you. Thank you for giving us this. For giving our children a father who will love them. For giving me a husband I don't have to watch fall. For sacrificing your own chance to be with us so that another version of us could be whole." "You're not just another version," Luke said. "You're who my parents were always supposed to be, who they would have been if the universe had been kinder. I didn't sacrifice anything. I reclaimed what was stolen from all of us." As evening approached, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, they walked back toward the settlement together. Anakin kept his arm around Luke's shoulders, as if afraid his son might disappear if he let go. "How long do we have?" Anakin asked. "Before you have to return?" "Days, maybe a week." Luke could feel the pull of the world between worlds growing stronger. The Force is patient, but not infinite. "I've changed what I came to change. Soon it'll be time to go home." "Will we ever see you again?" Padmé asked. Luke thought about the world between worlds, about the infinite portals showing every moment in time. "I don't know. Maybe. The Force works in mysterious ways. But even if we don't, you'll have Luke. You're Luke. And he'll be everything I couldn't be. Everything I was meant to be. He'll be amazing," Anakin said with absolute certainty. "Because he'll have you as his example, even if he never meets you. The Force will carry your presence, your sacrifice, your love. That's the legacy you're leaving us." That night, Luke stood alone in the ancient meditation hall, feeling the Force flow through him more purely than ever before. He'd done it, changed history, saved his father, given his family the life they deserved. Now he just had to find the strength to leave them. 3 days later, Padmé went into labor. The ancient infirmary on Tython, hastily restored by Jedi healers, filled with urgency as contractions began. Anakin paced the corridor outside, his anxiety so strong it rippled through the Force like waves. Luke stood with him, offering silent support while internally marveling at the moment he was witnessing. In his timeline, he'd never known these details. Never knew what his mother looked like in labor, what his father felt waiting for his children to be born. This was sacred ground he was walking, observing his own creation from outside the moment itself. The hours stretched, sunset came and went, Tython's moons rose, casting silver light through the crystal-embedded walls. Inside the infirmary, Padmé's cries mixed with the healer's encouragement. Finally, near midnight, a new sound joined the symphony. A baby's cry, high, piercing, absolutely perfect. "It's a boy," the healer called through the door, "healthy and strong." Anakin's knees nearly buckled. Luke caught his father's arm, steadying him. "Luke," Anakin whispered, tears streaming. "That's Luke, my son. I have a son." Minutes later, another cry, softer but no less insistent. "A girl, you have a daughter, Anakin." "Leia," Luke said, his own voice breaking. "That's Leia." The healer opened the door, gesturing them inside. Anakin rushed forward. Luke followed more slowly, his heart in his throat. Padmé lay propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant. In her arms, wrapped in simple cloth, two infants, one slightly larger, one smaller, both with their eyes squeezed shut and tiny fists waving. Luke's knees did buckle then. He caught himself against the wall, staring at the impossible sight. His parents, young and whole and alive, holding him and his sister as newborns. The moment that should have been filled with tragedy was instead filled with joy. Anakin knelt beside the bed, reaching out with trembling hands to touch the babies. Luke had dark hair already, his face scrunched with infant displeasure at being born. Leia was smaller, quieter, her features delicate even at minutes old. "They're perfect," Anakin breathed. "They're absolutely perfect." Padmé looked up at the older Luke standing near the doorway. "Come meet yourself," she said, smiling despite her exhaustion. "Come meet your sister." When he looked down at the infant version of himself, something fundamental shifted in his understanding of existence. He was looking at his own beginning, watching the moment of his entry into this world. "Hello, little one," Luke whispered to the baby. "You're going to have an amazing life. You're going to be loved, protected, trained by the best father any Jedi could ask for." The infant Luke's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, unseeing, but responding to the voice. The older Luke reached out tentatively, letting the baby's tiny hand wrap around his finger. "He knows you," Padmé said softly. "Through the Force. He knows your family." "Can I hold her?" the older Luke asked, looking at Leia. Padmé carefully transferred the baby girl into Luke's arms. Leia was so small, so fragile, her breathing quick and light against his chest. In his timeline, he'd never held his sister as an infant, never had this chance. "You're going to be extraordinary," Luke told her. "Strong and fierce and brilliant. You're going to change the galaxy, Leia, just by being yourself. Look at that expression. She's judging us. She's perfect," Luke said. "They both are." The family stayed together through that first night. Anakin and Padmé, the newborn twins, and the time-displaced son who had made this moment possible. Healers came and went, checking vitals, offering congratulations. But mostly, they left the family in peace. As dawn approached, Luke felt it. The pull of the world between worlds had grown from a gentle tug to an insistent demand. His time was running out. "I have to go soon," he said quietly, still holding baby Leia. "Today, maybe within hours." Padmé's face crumpled. Anakin reached out, placing his hand on Luke's shoulder. "We knew this was coming," Anakin said, though his voice shook. We hoped we'd have more time." "I did too." Luke carefully returned Leia to her mother's arms. "But I've stayed longer than the Force wanted. I can feel reality straining around me. If I don't leave soon, I might not be able to leave at all. I might become trapped between timelines existing nowhere fully." "Then we won't keep you," Padmé said, though tears streamed down her face. "But know this, we will tell them about you, both of them. When they're old enough to understand, we'll tell them about their uncle from the future who loved them before they were born, who saved their father from darkness, who gave them the chance to be a family." Luke bent down and kissed her forehead, then kissed both babies, his infant self and his sister. "Raise them well. Love them. Let them make mistakes and learn from them. Don't be so afraid of the dark side that you deny them normal emotions. That's what destroyed the old order." The Jedi Council gathered in the meditation hall one final time to bid Luke farewell. Word had spread through the settlement. The mysterious Jedi from the future was leaving. Hundreds of Jedi lined the paths leading to the ancient temple where Luke had first arrived on Tython, drawn by the same Force resonance that had guided him there. Luke walked through their ranks, acknowledging bows and thanks and tearful goodbyes. Younglings he'd taught basic lightsaber forms reached out to touch his robes as he passed. Masters clasped his shoulders, their gratitude radiating through the Force. At the temple entrance, the council waited. Yoda stepped forward first, looking up at Luke with ancient eyes that held more emotion than Luke had ever seen in them. Thank you, young Skywalker. Saved us, you have. Not just from death, but from becoming what we should never have been. A new order we build. Your gift, that is. The gift is seeing what you've become, Master Yoda. What you're becoming. The Jedi will survive because they remember what they forgot. That's all I ever wanted. The stern Master's expression had softened over the past month, the rigid certainty replaced with something approaching humility. I doubted you, questioned you, resisted every change you proposed. I was wrong. You saved us from our own pride. You saved yourselves, Luke said. I just gave you the push you needed. Obi-Wan embraced Luke tightly. In your timeline you trained me, Luke said quietly. Taught me to be a Jedi. Sacrificed yourself so I could escape. You were the closest thing I had to a father for most of my life. Then I'm honored, Obi-Wan said, his voice thick. Honored to have been that person for you, even in another time. May the Force be with you, Luke Skywalker. Always. One by one, the council members offered farewells. When they finished, Anakin stepped forward, carrying infant Luke in his arms. Padmé stood beside him, holding Leia. I don't know how to say goodbye, Anakin said. How do you say goodbye to your son who saved your life by erasing the need for you to meet him? You don't say goodbye, Luke said. You say thank you. Thank you for being the father you're going to be. Thank you for raising these children with love instead of dogma. Thank you for proving that Anakin Skywalker was always stronger than Darth Vader. Anakin transferred the baby to Padmé's other arm and pulled the older Luke into a fierce embrace. Thank you, my son, for this chance, for this life, for showing me that love is worth fighting for. They held each other for a long moment, father and son, present and future, darkness avoided and light reclaimed. When they separated, Luke looked down at the babies one final time. Grow up strong, grow up loved, and when you're old enough, come find me in the Force. I'll be there, watching, proud of everything you become. The Jedi parted, creating a path to the inner chamber where the mural of the Mortis gods waited. The same mural that had opened the doorway on Lothal now glowed softly in response to Luke's presence. Luke stood before it, reaching out through the Force. The father's eyes opened in the stone. The daughter's form became light. The sun's shadow writhed. The portal began to open, that familiar blue-white energy bleeding into reality. Wait! Anakin called from the doorway. Will I ever see you again? Maybe. The Force connects all things, across all times. If we're meant to meet again, we will. But even if we don't, you'll have your Luke. Raise him well. Make him the Jedi I should have been from the beginning. I will, I promise. The portal was fully open now, showing that infinite void of swirling cosmic energy, the pathways of light stretching into eternity. Luke stepped toward it, then paused. One more thing, he called back. When the twins are old enough, take them to Tatooine. Let them see where their father came from. Let them play in the desert and watch the binary sunset. Let them understand that greatness can come from humble beginnings. We will, Padmé promised. Luke turned and stepped through the portal. The sensation was exactly as he remembered, falling and flying simultaneously, time losing all meaning, reality becoming fluid. The voices of countless moments overlapped around him. He heard Anakin's promise, I will never fall. He heard Yoda's wisdom, a new order we build. He heard his infant self crying, alive, whole, loved. He walked the pathways, navigating by instinct and intent. Portals floated past, showing the new timeline he'd created. Anakin training his children, the Jedi Order flourishing on Tython, a galaxy slowly healing from war without descending into tyranny. He saw alternate versions of himself. The Luke who would grow up on Tython with his parents, who would never know loss or loneliness, who would become a Jedi not through tragedy, but through love. That Luke would be better than he was, stronger, more balanced. That Luke would be what he could never be. The thought brought no jealousy, only profound satisfaction. Finally, Luke found his portal, the one leading back to the Lothal Temple, back to his own timeline. He could see the chamber on the other side, empty and waiting. Before stepping through, he looked back one final time at the portal showing Tython. He saw Anakin and Padmé walking through the ancient temple, a baby in each arm, surrounded by Jedi who no longer feared attachment. He saw a future bright with promise instead of dark with tragedy. May the Force be with you, Luke whispered. All of you, always. He stepped through. Luke emerged in the Lothal Temple gasping, falling to his knees on the ancient stone floor. The transition felt like being torn apart and reassembled. His body screamed with temporal stress. His mind reeled from existing in two times simultaneously. But he was home, back in his own timeline, back where he belonged. He stumbled out of the temple into Lothal's wilderness. The Loth wolves were gone. The twin suns hung at a different angle than when he'd left. How long had he been gone? Hours? Days? Luke reached out through the Force, feeling for the timeline he'd created. And it was there. Not a dream, not a vision, but a real parallel stream of existence running alongside his own. Both timelines were equally valid, both equally real. In one, he was the son who'd watched his father die redeemed. In the other, he was the uncle who'd saved his father before the fall. Luke walked away from the temple, his ship waiting where he'd left it. His students would be wondering where he'd gone. His work rebuilding the Jedi Order in his own timeline remained unfinished. But he felt lighter than he had in years, unburdened, at peace. He'd saved his father, changed history, given Anakin Skywalker the life he deserved. And in doing so, he'd found something he'd been searching for since the day he'd learned the truth about Vader: forgiveness. Not just for his father, but for himself, for not being able to save Anakin sooner in his own timeline. For carrying the weight of that failure for so long, he was free. As Luke climbed into his ship and set coordinates for home, he felt a presence in the Force, warm, familiar, approving. His father, his Anakin from his own timeline, appeared as a Force ghost beside him, shimmering blue in the cockpit. "You did it," Anakin said, his voice filled with wonder. "I felt it through the Force. Another me in another time, living the life I should have lived. I couldn't save you," Luke said quietly. "Not in our timeline, but I could save another version of you. I had to try." "You've given me something I never thought I'd have," Anakin said. "The knowledge that in at least one universe I got it right. I was the father you deserved from the beginning. That's more than I could ever have asked for." Luke reached out, his hand passing through the ghost's form. "You redeemed yourself in the end. That's what matters." "No," Anakin said, his voice firm. "What matters is that you loved me enough to try to prevent the redemption from being necessary. You loved me enough to cross time itself. That's what matters, my son." But he didn't feel alone. He felt connected. To his father. To his family, to a version of himself he'd never meet but who would live the life Luke had always dreamed of. He was the son of Anakin Skywalker. In every timeline, in every universe. And that would always be enough. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying Luke back to his own time and his own students, he smiled. The Force would be with them all. Always, in every timeline, in every moment, forever. 20 years later on Tython, Luke and Leia Skywalker, 20 years old, newly knighted, strong in the Force and in each other, stood before the ancient mural of the Mortis gods. Their father had brought them here, to the place where a stranger from the future had changed everything. "Tell us the story again," Leia said. "About Uncle Luke." And Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Master and proud father, told his children about the man from the future who'd loved them before they existed, who'd saved their family from darkness, who'd given them all a second chance. When he finished, young Luke placed his hand on the mural. For a moment, just a moment, he felt another presence, another version of himself, older, wiser, watching from across time. "Thank you," young Luke thought, "for giving me this life." And across the infinite distances of the world between worlds, the older Luke felt the gratitude and smiled. "You're welcome, little brother. Live well, live fully. Be the Jedi I should have been." The Force connected them for one shining moment. Two versions of the same soul, separated by time and circumstance but united by love. Then the moment passed, and the Force, vast and eternal, continued its work of bringing balance to all things, forever. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.